This week, Northern New York is inching dangerously close to having 50% of its families struggling to afford their basic needs. Their friends, neighbors, and co-workers who have jobs but still are having a tough time getting by.
It's just hard to make ends meet.
Yeah, definitely. It is sometimes.
Hardworking families are having to choose between paying for food or rent, childcare, or keeping their car on the road. Tonight, we're focusing on how community partners and volunteers are stepping up to raise awareness and assist this growing but hidden population, and what you can do to help your neighbors in need.
Mountain Lake Journal on Mountain Lake PBS is made possible in part by
Northern Insuring, guiding your way for 85 years with offices in Plattsburgh, Whitehall, and Messina, providing personal insurance, business insurance, and life and employee benefits services.
Northline Utilities creates employment and training opportunities for North Country residents with projects that build community and social infrastructure. We're family-focused and education-oriented. Power is our business and pride is our choice.
Knight Automotive, featuring a full selection of the entire Buick lineup in stock, and our world-class rated General Motors technician, Terry Relation, with 40 years of experience. Knight Automotive, Route 3, Plattsburgh.
What you are about to watch is the latest in our Community Forum series addressing important issues affecting our region, issues that matter to you, your family, and your neighbors. Hi, I'm Bill McColgan of Mountain Lake PBS. Our mission here is to inspire and inform with both programming and meaningful community engagement. This forum addressing the critical issues surrounding rural poverty and the working poor meets that mission on multiple levels, and it's the type of discussion that you can only find here on Mountain Lake PBS. We strive to be the convener of the important conversations taking place in our community and bringing them to you, our viewers. You turn to Mountain Lake PBS for exactly this type of informed reporting, and we just couldn't do it without you. Thanks for tuning in, and thank you for your continued support.
Mountain Lake PBS is proud to partner with Chasing the Dream, a nationwide public media reporting initiative exploring poverty and opportunity in America.
Hello everyone and welcome to a special hour-long edition of Mountain Lake Journal. I'm Tom Halleck. This week we're hosting one of our town hall style community forums with a panel of guests and studio audience. With Thanksgiving right around the corner, many of us are beginning to reflect on all the things we are thankful for. However, Thanksgiving can also be a very difficult time of year for some. While many of us may be deciding between mashed or sweet potatoes, others in the community are deciding between feeding their family or paying the rent. Tonight, we're going to meet who's having to make that tough decision. Their name is Alice. Alice isn't a person, but an acronym. Families that are asset limited, income constrained, and employed. Alice is the United Way's shorthand for the working poor. They are friends and neighbors we see every day at work, the store, or our kids' soccer game. They are people who have jobs, work full-time, and yet they're struggling to get by. Many are just a single paycheck or illness away from financial crisis. Alice is the changing face of poverty in New York.
I met Charlene about 20 years ago. She was Student of the Month. I went to her high school graduation, and I think I saw the potential then. And to look at Charlene, she's put together, she's professional, she's articulate, and she's respected. On the outside, it looks like this girl's got it together and, you know, what does she have to worry about? But it's just not that simple. It's hard to see somebody have to fight so hard. I mean, I'm not saying that things have to come easy in life for people, but she fights really hard.
So even though I have this full-time career, it's still a struggle. It's still hard to make ends meet. I'm a divorced mom of 2 boys, ages 10 and 7. They live with me full-time. My 10-year-old son has special needs. He's more demanding and he needs more than just your average kid. I had worked full-time in the banking industry. Due to the birth of our second child, daycare costs exceeded what my salary was, so I quit my job to become a stay-at-home mom. When the divorce occurred, that created an extreme hardship. My parents tapped into their resources, and it was just too much. Too many months had gone by. I had to start putting a lot of bills on credit cards, whether it was the water bill, phone bills. I had to watch my car. It towed away. It wasn't a path I wanted to go down, but I had no choice. So when I was offered the position where I am now, it was the light at the end of the tunnel for me. I love helping other people. It's the way I can provide for my kids, for my family. And it's a job that makes you feel good at the end of the day, because you know you're making a difference.
Being able to put your child to college and own a home and own a vehicle and have health insurance and be sustainable. That's the American dream. It's much more difficult than I think most people think.
So now I'm faced with moving my family. After receiving a sheriff's notice, the bank will most likely take the house back. You can't keep a family of 3 afloat on my salary alone. The boys have only ever known this house as theirs. My little guy is more upset about it than the older one. He doesn't want to change his bus stop.
I am rooting for Charlene. I believe in Charlene. I think it's circumstance, that's why she is where she is today. But if we as a society change circumstance and change environment to support one another, then I think we can make those moves. No one does anything alone or in isolation. And what one does impacts somebody else.
If we don't discuss this and we don't talk about it and we don't raise the awareness, it's never going to change. I believe that that's what creates opportunity. And if I have to give a voice, if I have to give a face, then I'm willing to do that because I am Alice.
Charlene is the face of a campaign by the United Way for the Adirondack region and other chapters across New York and the nation that are calling attention to the growing numbers of working poor. And joining us now to talk about this tonight is John Bernardi, who is the CEO of the United Way for the Adirondack region that covers Clinton, Essex, and Franklin counties. Also, Sylvie Nelson is the executive director of the North Country Workforce Development Board, a United Way board member and a member of the United Way's Alice Steering Committee. Sue LeBlanc de Rocher is a businesswoman from Plattsburgh who is a member of the United Way board and also an Alice Steering Board member. Thank you both for being here. And also with us tonight is New York State Assemblyman Billy Jones, who represents the 115th Assembly District, which covers Clinton and Franklin counties and 4 towns in St. Lawrence County. And even though we're not focusing on St. Lawrence County tonight, or Hamilton or Warren or Washington counties, the story and the numbers in those counties are very much the same. Welcome to you all. We appreciate you being here to talk about this tonight. John, why don't we begin with what Alice is all about? Why did the United Way chapters across New York focus on this research and do this in-depth analysis?
The Alice report really provides a very different lens in which to view poverty through, a lens that has never been utilized before. The face of poverty has changed from generation to generation. If you think back a generation or two, and you think of the Great Depression, and you have this vision of people leaving the Dust Bowl in their Model Ts or their Model As with pots and pans hanging from the vehicle and heading to the city to find jobs that didn't exist. And then you fast forward to the War on Poverty in the mid-60s, an initiative that was Kennedy and Johnson And you have a very different view of what poverty was then. Large tenements in neighborhoods and cities that were in rough shape, and poverty just everywhere on the street, everywhere you looked. And then you fast forward to 2017 and you see a very different face of poverty. What we're seeing now is working families, people that are employed, that are struggling to make ends meet despite their efforts to work 2 and 3 jobs sometimes per household. Yet they're close to the edge of that financial cliff where something like a flat tire or a leaky roof or a broken furnace, things that many of us take for granted as mere inconvenience, can actually be a catastrophic event leading to a tremendous chain of events that could lead to homelessness, unemployment, and any number of things. So we're seeing a very different face of poverty, and the Alice report provides some very enlightening and interesting data in which to view the way poverty looks today. That's not to say we still don't have homeless people. We certainly do. And we have people that are visiting soup kitchens and food shelves and things of that nature. That does still exist to a lesser degree than it used to. And the demographic that we've seen growing is this poverty in terms of working families and household incomes that do not allow families to make ends meet without assistance.
What percentage statewide and here in the North Country of families fall into this category?
44%, Tom. It's nearly half of every household in our region that is living below the Alice threshold. If you look at the federal poverty limits for an individual and for a family of 4, they're really, really low. It's just not a realistic number, just shy of $12,000 for an individual and right around $23,000 for a family of 4. So the federal government would have us believe, and this is not a dig on the federal government in any way, but the federal government would have us believe that if you make in excess of $12,000 a year, then you don't live in poverty. And if you're a family of 4 and you're making $23,000 a year, then you don't live in poverty. Well, we know from the Alice report and the Alice data that actually a family of 4 in this region would need to make almost $60,000 per household to live without assistance. And an individual would need to make right around $23,000. So the gap between the federal poverty limit on one hand and the Alice threshold on the other hand is considerable. And there's tens of thousands of people and thousands of households here in our region that are falling in between that gap.
When you saw those numbers, did they surprise you?
They did. Certainly, those of us who work in the field have an idea of poverty and the struggles that people are facing. But I think it was a little enlightening and a bit surprising for people across the state to realize just how significant the numbers were and the impact it's having. It's nearly half of every household, not just in our region, but across the whole state of New York. Nearly half of every household is living below the Alice threshold. So we think of this financial cliff, and we all have a financial cliff. Everyone has a financial cliff. It's a matter of how far away from the edge of that cliff we are on a daily basis. And some of us have a little more of a buffer than others. But unfortunately, there's a huge demographic of people that are living right on the edge of that financial cliff. And it's not because they are lazy, and it's not because they don't want to be independent or successful. These are hardworking people. In many cases, they're working 2 and 3 jobs per household. Yet, due to the cost of living and any number of other factors, that financial cliff is so close that they can see the bottom of it on a daily basis.
And for many of them, they're not eligible for entitlements.
That's right.
Many don't want the entitlements.
That's correct.
Sylvia and Sue, who are Alice? Who are we talking about here?
I mean, it could be any of us. I mean, you don't see them. They're very hidden, and the reason is because that financial cliff, unless you're in it, we won't know who our neighbors are, our friends and families. It's hidden out there.
People don't really talk about it either. I don't feel that they want, who wants to share that you're struggling financially? We all want to be on our own 2 feet and make sure we can take care of it ourselves, especially when you have children. You want to make sure the children see a normal life. So I think it's just one of those things that you just don't want to talk about it.
Is it young families? Is it senior citizens? Is it across the board?
I think it's across the board.
Assemblyman, again, thank you for being here with us tonight. You live in a rural part of Franklin County in Chateaugay. Does this surprise you, or have you known that this population is out there? Have you been hearing from these people who fall into the Alice category and are struggling?
Well, Tom, I think in my past experiences being on the Franklin County legislature, we deal with those issues of our impoverished residents. But the numbers are certainly alarming, as John said, when you look at them. And working in the United Way and working with the United Way throughout the past, it didn't surprise me as much, but the numbers are certainly alarming when you look at the sheer numbers. 44% fall in that category here in the North Country. And the numbers do increase. I know we're talking about rural poverty issues, but the numbers do increase in some of our urban areas as well. So, yeah, it's alarming.
And there are pockets, certainly in some of the rural counties, where it's much higher. In Malone, for example, 53%, sure. and
sure.
a few smaller communities where it's even higher than that. What's been the reaction in Albany to these numbers?
I would say not necessarily the Alice project has been mentioned, but I know in working with the New York State Assembly, we work on behalf of our income-constrained residents all the time. I don't think there's a day that goes by in the New York State Assembly that we don't talk about income-constrained individuals or residents in our state. There are other things that fall into this factor, healthcare being one. I was proud to introduce and sponsor legislation to revamp our Rural Healthcare Council. It'll work specifically with the New York State Department of Health to provide them the information needed, the challenges that we face in rural health care. I also have a bill that addresses the Medicaid reimbursement for our home health care aides, which is a major problem in our rural areas right now. It'll actually increase that reimbursement. And talking about child care, we need to do more. We talked about individuals and families working 2 jobs, odd shift jobs, how you're expected to take care of your children. We have a bill out there right now, a bipartisan bill that helps with child care tax credits for families. But it needs to be a multi-pronged approach, and I can guarantee you that myself and my colleagues continue to work on this in the New York State Assembly.
John, let's get into the numbers. What it takes to meet basic needs in our state for individuals, an average family of 4, and the survival budget, as you folks call it in this Alice report, is about $21,500 for an individual, as you mentioned. Mm-hmm. Anywhere from $60,000 to $62,000 for a family of 4, depending on where you are. Statewide, the average is $62,000. In the 3 counties, Clinton, Essex, and Franklin, it's closer to $60,000. Right. All significantly more than the 2014 federal poverty level. As you mentioned, $11,500 for an individual and just shy of $24,000 for a family of 4. In the 3 counties in the North Country, Clinton, Essex, and Franklin, a little less than the statewide average, but as you can see, housing costs, childcare, $1,200 a month, food, transportation is a big issue, and we're going to talk about that tonight. Healthcare, as the Assemblyman just mentioned, and taxes, both for an individual and family of 4. The total just above $20,000 for a single adult, $59,000 for a family of 4, still more than twice the federal poverty level.
The federal poverty limit, Tom, to your point, is really low, and there's this huge gap, and there's these people that are struggling, and they're not eligible for many types of assistance. They're falling through the cracks, and they're falling into the gap, if you will.
What can the United Way and its partner agencies do for these folks? What are some of the programs you have that you can step up and say, we can help you with this?
Well, first of all, it's important for people to understand that there's an information and referral system funded by the state of New York, and again, Assemblyman Jones has been a big proponent of that as well. It's 211 information and referral, so people can dial 211 and get a live specialist who can refer them to a variety of different programs, and people do that. But we also get calls right directly to our office as well. And we actually have a tremendous network of health and human service programs in this region. We're very blessed. And some examples of the assistance that's available to ALICE households would be the community action agencies like JCEO that serves Franklin and Clinton County, and Adirondack Community Action Programs, or ACAP, in Essex County. The services they provide with United Way funds are what we call safety net or unmet needs programs. So people that aren't eligible for social services through the county government, which, by the way, we're also blessed with excellent departments of social services in this region, really very strong. But again, a number of households do not qualify for those programs. So JCO and ACAP can help. It can be rental assistance sometimes, which prevents homelessness. It can be vehicle repairs, which prevents unemployment. Sometimes it's furnaces, roofs, various things like that. Childcare, even.
Soup kitchens, food pantries in the area, have they seen an increase in demand, and are they stepping up and helping?
Yes. Absolutely, yes. Particularly, and we fund numerous food shelves across the region as well. Particularly the food shelves across the region have seen double and triple the demand over the past 3 years. It's just astonishing. People are hungry. And they're making choices of having to go without food because they need to buy their medication, or they need to get the car repaired, because if they don't get the car repaired, they're going to lose their job. So there went the grocery money.
Assemblyman, the state's minimum wage is going up. It will be raised from the current $9.70 an hour to $10.40 an hour at the end of next month, end of December. Upstate, it will go to $12.50 an hour by 2021. And then what? We're still waiting to hear if there will be a study, or whether the labor commissioner will decide to boost it up to $15 an hour.
Yes, and I believe the Department of Labor will do a study, and that was agreed on when the last bill came out. But as John said before, I think we need to not sit here and bash our employers so much as to ask them to understand what some of these families are going through. And we need to do more of that. I will say on the federal income guidelines, I think you'll get agreement from all of us here. That needs to be changed, and we need to work with our federal partners to change that. Those numbers, they seem a little ridiculous.
To so many people, that seems like a no-brainer. Why hasn't this been done before? Why is it from state to state the same, from Mississippi to Maine to New York, where the cost of living in New York is so much higher, yet it's the same level? Sure. And I think a lot of people probably scratch their heads and say,
I think that's one of the biggest, or one of the bigger things to come out of this report. Those numbers are way, way too low.
But this ALICE report uses a different methodology, different formula, and really comes up with probably a much better, more realistic picture.
The report has provided something that's cutting edge in terms of research of this type, and so the data, I think, is really eye-opening. And to Assemblyman Jones' point earlier, I have been contacted by the governor's office, staff of the governor's office, and they have heard about ALICE, and they wanted to know more. So it's a very fresh look.
As people say there's a need for that fresh look, and they look to both Washington and Albany for help. Are we seeing, though, in Washington now, Medicaid cuts are proposed and other cuts that could, for a number of the folks that fall into the Alice categories, make the situation even more difficult?
Yes. Honestly, working in Albany and New York State government, it's trying times right now because we really don't know what's coming out of Washington from day to day. Something that could hurt New Yorkers, certain changes that could hurt New Yorkers and people here in the North Country. So it's stressful and it's trying, but I think we have a commitment among the New York State government on all sides that we're not going to let that further the gap.
John, here in the North Country and in New York, were you able to identify why ALICE exists? Were you able to point to specific things like a higher cost of living or higher taxes, a lack of high-paying jobs? Were you able to pinpoint why ALICE is so prevalent here in the North Country?
Certainly, the high cost of living pertains to that, Tom, but that's not unique to our region, and it's not unique to New York State. But we do have a high cost of living. We have a lack of high-paying jobs. Again, that's not to say that we don't have some great jobs in the region and more coming. Some great jobs around the corner, but we don't have enough of them to be able to take care of the households that we're talking about, and those are some major reasons that we have this issue.
Sylvia, is the hope that the new jobs coming to the area, new manufacturing jobs with companies like Norsk Titanium and Nova Bus, will pay higher salaries that will help these families?
Yes, and they do, and that helps kind of. It acts as a competition, basically, so that the better employees of the lower paying companies will basically jump ship, and because they've got the type of skills that those companies are looking for. And so in order to attract new talent, these other companies will have to match up or be close to it. But what we're seeing, though, and since 2006, is a decline in funding from the federal government. We get solely funded by the federal government. And because of the type of jobs that are coming to our area, they're highly technical. They demand, as I mentioned earlier, a better skill from the employee. And for us to be able to help them and train them, it costs that much more. And even if you do have a low unemployment, as we have now, the challenge is actually greater because the ones that can meet the requirements of the jobs that are existing, they're already employed. So we have to work with the ones that have the skills gap, and that's extremely costly.
Are there obstacles? The North Country Workforce Development Board hosted a discussion with Congresswoman Elise Stefanik this summer, and one of the issues that came up was the lack of affordable and reliable childcare and transportation in rural areas, and how that makes it difficult for people to be able to take part in training programs like at the new Institute for Advanced Manufacturing on the Clinton Community College campus if they don't have help with childcare or reliable means of transportation to get there. How significant are these obstacles when it comes to getting workers the training they need to get these better paying jobs?
It's very significant. And just to give you an idea, international paper in Ticonderoga, they have an aging workforce. They're retiring them they're looking at replacing 20 to 30 people per year. And some of these potential employees have to start on third shift. Well, third shift is nighttime. And when you have, as I mentioned earlier, single mothers with children, who would be qualified for these positions, they just don't have the daycare. So that's a huge challenge. And the transportation, I mean, this is such a huge area. You know, it's a challenge because it's expensive. Gas is, $2.75 a gallon. Plus you have to factor in the cost of maintenance, that flat tire. And we're working with John through the United Way and the Alice Committee on helping solve the transportation problem, and childcare is right alongside with that because of the fact that if we could solve these two issues, I think that would help us significantly.
And Assemblyman, do we simply not have adequate public transportation?
You know what, and Sylvia had mentioned, we live in such of a vast remote area. And I think we have to, we are certainly unique in that sense, but we have to think outside the box when it comes to that. In my former life as chair of the Franklin County Legislature, we had job seekers in Franklin, and we had the jobs out here in the Plattsburgh region. So we partnered up with, and Sylvia was involved in that, and we partnered up with our transportation networks so that we could actually bring the people to the jobs.
And are people taking advantage of that, or
yes,
they're using that transportation to get to the jobs in Plattsburgh?
Yes.
We're going to take a quick break here, but when we come back, we'll talk more about the lack of transportation and the impact it can have on Alice families. We're going to continue with our discussion in just a moment.
The story of the Great Riders is part of the story of New York State's history. It's a story of service and tradition, sort of in the style of the Old West, of how justice and order were brought to the rural areas of New York State.
Monday night at 9 here on Mountain Lake PBS.
I still feel that same sense of awe and wonder every time I get to the summit.
You just like life a lot more.
It never gets old.
My non-climbing friends certainly understand my passion, but they'll never fully understand the why.
You better have some idea of where you're going and what the trail is going to be like.
Constantly, people, it's only a day trip, and it so often isn't.
Coming in November to Mountain Lake PBS.
Welcome back, everyone. If you're tuning in for New York Now, you can watch it at a special time this week on Sunday at 5 a.m. So set your DVR. You can also watch all of New York Now's episodes online. We are hosting a special hour-long edition of Mountain Lake Journal this week, a community forum on a huge segment of our workforce here in the North Country and all across New York State, really, that's employed. In some cases, they're working more than one job, but they're still having a tough time meeting their basic needs and making ends meet. The United Way has given them a name, Alice, and tonight we're giving them a face. We're about to meet a young single mother of two who has a job, but at the end of the month is having to make those tough choices of what to pay and what to put off and go without. So you drop her off there and then the bus will pick you up there.
With an active one-year-old, Megan Nelson has her hands full. She also works part-time 20 hours a week as a bus monitor. She does get help from social services paying for her rent for her apartment here in the city of Plattsburgh and her daughter Ava's daycare. But other expenses have to come out of her paycheck. And earning minimum wage often means at the end of the month, there are tough choices that have to be made.
It's just hard to make ends meet.
Yeah, definitely. It is sometimes.
And if there's no school or it's a vacation week, there's no work.
If the kids aren't going to school, you don't get paid.
Nope, exactly.
And getting to her job is no easy feat. Megan often has to walk the 2 miles across the city to get to work.
I couldn't afford my rent when I was pregnant with her. So the car that I did have, I had to get rid of so that I could pay rent so I wouldn't be on the streets.
And so how much of a hardship has it been for you not to have a car?
Very, trying to find rides or people to help out.
You do have some neighbors who help you out.
Yes, I do.
They let you borrow their car?
Yeah. Yeah, I have a couple every once in a while.
And that's nice. That makes a big difference.
If it's like something very important, like food and whatnot, they'll let me. Or they'll take me.
But the rest of the time you have to walk.
Yes.
Because taxis aren't an option, probably.
No, not with $300 every 2 weeks. I can't afford to put out like $100 each check to go towards a car.
Does it worry you?
Sometimes, yes, especially when it's cold out and I have to walk her to and from daycare. She's kind of young to be out in the freezing cold weather.
Being a single mom is tough enough, but Megan says not having reliable transportation has become her biggest problem.
Just getting to and from daycare, work, back and forth, shopping, all that. Pretty much just the transportation is my issue right now.
Let's bring back our panel now. John is back and Sylvia are back. We're also happy to be joined by Brittany Christensen, who is on the United Way Alice Steering Committee, and Mark Hamilton, who is the Executive Director of the Plattsburgh Housing Authority. Welcome to you both. We appreciate you being here. And as we were discussing just a few moments ago, this is a real problem in the North Country. For many people, if they don't have a car, it really limits what they can do.
We live in an automobile society here in the region. While public transportation is a good option for some, it doesn't meet all of the needs. So to be without a car, think about it. Imagine being without a car. Tom Halleck without a car, John Bernardi without a car. I couldn't imagine being without a car.
Walking to work.
Think about it, and there's thousands of people that are struggling to either keep a car or get a car or can't work certain jobs because they don't have a car. Very, very prevalent issue, more so than we think.
You mentioned a program called Wheels for Work. This was a program that used to exist in Clinton and Essex counties?
This was a great program. What it would provide was vehicles for employment purposes or sometimes repairs as well. And we had it in Clinton, Essex, and Franklin counties. And the funding dried up and it went away, I think about 5 years ago, or maybe even more than that. And it's a program that's missed greatly. There are some programs that are similar, like, for example, Clinton County Department of Social Services, I believe Essex and Franklin as well, have a program that can assist people with vehicle repairs for employment purposes, but they're not able to meet the high demand that's out there.
And you've mentioned that this has been talked about, trying to resurrect this, bring it back in some form?
Yes, through the United Way, through the Alice Committee or Task Force. We are looking, I guess that was identified as one of the priority for the committee to look at, because of it's one of the biggest challenges, and the need is great.
Mark, you've started a new pilot program teaming up with the city of Plattsburgh to buy homes, fix them up, and offer them to families that fall within the Alice financial category. Tell us about this.
Yeah, so one of the things that we've recognized is the need to sort of think outside of the box, to be different and creative. And as we have, over the course of the last several years, seen this issue of the Alice family, one of the things that we decided we could do was that we could go out, we created a nonprofit affiliate of the Housing Authority, and that becomes our vehicle to acquire property as inexpensively as possible, sometimes through a foreclosure or through donations, however it may be, invest into that property, get it to a standard, but do so by having created partnerships in the community so that we can get labor either free or much reduced. Materials we'll get, we've been building these relationships over the last 12 to 14 months so that we can then flip the house essentially to an income qualified family, getting them into a very affordable home ownership opportunity so that they can be successful, so that they can own their home in a way that will be affordable to them. And then they can go on about the rest of the trying to get through the rest of the issues that the Alice families face.
So instead of giving them special rates on mortgages or other incentives, you keep the cost of the house down.
Correct.
And make it more affordable for them, and they don't have to spend as much of their income on the house. It's they can get a traditional mortgage, and but the cost of the house is low enough that it makes it easier for them.
It makes it easier, and one of the biggest issues for those families is that down payment, is to have that large amount of money up front. And so by reducing the cost of the home significantly by tens of thousands of dollars, we can reduce what's needed for that down payment as well.
How many of these homes have you done this with?
We haven't done any yet. We are working closely right now with the city of Plattsburgh on a property that they've identified the need to raise and then hopefully rebuild. So we're hoping this will be the first opportunity. But like I said, over the last 12 to 14 months, we've spent as much time as we can to really build those relationships to have a sustainable program.
You're hoping this would be the first of many homes.
Absolutely.
You mentioned a little earlier, you've seen the demand at the food pantries go up. Are the school districts helping out? Are they providing free lunches and breakfasts to more and more students now that fall within the ALICE financial category?
Absolutely. The schools are the greatest advocates for children, and they're not only are they doing that, but I know you're going to talk about the backpack program, and the schools have been the driving force between the backpack programs, but free and reduced lunch. And there's a lot that goes on in the school systems that we don't see, social work, if you will. And educators typically don't just go home at the end of the day and leave it all behind. It's just not in their nature. They're nurturers in addition to educators. So we actually work closely with many of the school districts across the region, and they're doing a lot to support ALICE households that we wouldn't necessarily recognize or see on the surface. So,
and you mentioned backpack programs.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. A few years ago, a number of communities started that here in the city of Plattsburgh, the 3 elementary schools. About 125 backpacks are going out every week. And as we found out this past week, much of it is through the help of volunteers.
Every week, volunteers help pack up healthy meals and snacks that get put in backpacks that are handed out to students at all 3 of the city's elementary schools.
So the backpack program provides a backpack full of food for students in the Plattsburgh City Elementary Schools. We currently have MoMA, Oak, and Bailey. And the students are chosen, they're referred to the school by their teachers or by the principal for showing signs of food insecurity. They do not have to have a certain income, and that's what's really great about the program is that for the people that are living above the line of poverty, they can still be helped by the backpack program. So every Friday, the student can take home a backpack full of food, and it's just really great. The parents really appreciate it, and it helps them get through the weekend and come back to school on Monday ready to learn.
Wyatt Shaw and his co-workers from Glens Falls National Bank volunteer once a month.
We try to alternate so that everybody gets a chance to volunteer and do some good for the community. It's a great way to, help people get through.
They're obviously helping the community, but when you're actually packing the bags, you can see the difference that you're making. It's not like writing a check, which is also a great thing, but you're actually helping hands-on. And I think people get a lot of enjoyment out of that. They know how many bags we pack, and if we're packing 100 bags, that's 100 students and their families that we're helping.
And the backpack program gets help from the United Way. You provide funding for the one for the city and numerous communities around the North Country.
Yes, we do. Oftentimes, though, there's a variety of resources that are available for the backpack programs, but we fund a number of them across the region.
I've heard about the backpack program several times over the last 5 years in different capacities. I used to work for the North Country Healthy Heart Network as a community nutrition coordinator. And oftentimes I would go into communities in Franklin County and hear people just tout the benefits of the backpack program. And it's something that everyone gets a lot of joy out of being involved in.
And joining us now is John Bartlett, the program coordinator for the Ticonderoga Area Backpack Program. John, we appreciate you being here with us tonight.
Glad to be here.
How many years ago did you start the program in your community?
We started in 2013 with 30 children at the Ticonderoga Elementary School, and thanks to the support that we've received from individual donors and organizations like the United Way and the Adirondack Foundation and others, we've been able to grow the program steadily since then. Right now, we have 125 students at Ticonderoga, both elementary, middle, and high school. And we've also worked with other schools and helped them to get programs started in their locations. That includes Crown Point, Schroon Lake, Mariah, and most recently, Peru Elementary, as John mentioned.
And that just started this past September.
Yes, it did.
And were you surprised when it first started to hear the number of students that were taking backpacks home? Did you know that Alice families were out there and that they needed this help, or were you surprised by how many people were participating?
I was surprised. My perspective was that I didn't remember there being that much poverty when I was young and I was growing up. However, my secret weapon is my wife. She's the school nurse at Ticonderoga Elementary Middle School. So she's the eyes and ears, and she keeps me informed in terms of where the needs are, and it's scary how much need there is out there.
What do you hear from parents and others in the community about the response to this?
The typical response is, thank you so much. This really helps, and they're just very, very appreciative. This past 2 summers, we've actually grown or expanded the backpack program to include a summer food distribution. And in that, we've had more direct contact with the parents. In the weekend backpack program, we don't meet with the parents. We send the backpacks home with the children. But in the summer, the parents were coming in to pick up the food that was being made available to them. And they just very, very appreciative and couldn't say enough good about the food and how much it was helping them and their families in their situation.
Other communities saw what you were doing and said, help us out, we want to do the same sort of thing. So this has really grown. The size of the program has doubled, really serving 6 and 7 other communities now.
Yes. They've come to me, and in other instances I've gone to them and tried to give them a nudge to help them get started. And we provide mentoring, coaching, counseling, as well as financial support to help them get over the initial hump.
And a great story, at Mariah Central School, it was a student, a Girl Scout, who said, let's do this program here, and with your help, she got the program going.
A tremendous young lady, Brooke Milden. We've been looking for a champion at Mariah for about 1.5 years, and she came out of the blue, so to speak. But she was able to organize the program, organize the fundraising, organize all the volunteers. I was just there to give moral support. She did all the work. And the amazing thing about it was, at the time, she was only a freshman. But I can't say enough good about her. She's a tremendous young lady.
You are now helping about 250 students every single weekend throughout all these communities with these programs.
Well, as I said earlier tonight, I can't be in 2 and 3 places at the same time. But yes, through the related programs, which I like to call satellite programs, the ones in Crown Point through to Peru, yes, there's that many.
Run mostly by volunteers who care about this, and,
yes.
And this is important to them.
Yeah. The thing that I typically say is, once you get a backpack program started in a community, then people sit up, take notice, and they want to help. As the volunteers you saw in the video, some people like to volunteer, some people like to write checks, some people do both.
And when you say writing checks, there is a way for folks that they can sponsor a student for the entire school year.
Yes.
For $183, they can guarantee that student will have 30-some backpacks for the entire school year?
Right. That is the price for 30 backpacks. So in Thai, we're actually doing 32 weekends this year. That price comes to us from our partner in this program, the Regional Food Bank of Northeast New York, which is out of Latham or Albany. They plan the menus for the weekend backpack and deliver the food to us on a once-a-month basis. So we go to a local drop-off point, pick it up, and bring it back to school, and then get it organized on the shelves.
We're getting requests from across the region on a weekly basis for either, as John said, sometimes it's technical assistance, sometimes it's funds for startup, sometimes it's to create partnerships and collaborations like the one John just described, and we can be the vehicle for that. Bruce Garcia and I went out to Saranac and together and helped them start that. And I actually pointed the people from in Peru your way because they needed to talk to John. And so I don't think a week goes by that there isn't some interest. And you know, to John's point, this is an organic program, and it grows from the grassroots level of people caring for each other. And these are the greatest kinds of programs. I mean, the government can't solve everybody's problems, nor should we expect the government to do so. And so when you see programs like the Backpack program, that again, they're just organic and they're grassroots. And these are the greatest programs because of people like John Bartlett and so many others across the region.
John, thank you. We appreciate you coming here today.
Thank you.
And Megan Murphy with the Adirondack Foundation. We appreciate you being here.
Well, thanks for having us. And I think first I'd like to thank John for the ALICE study. I think I work for Adirondack Foundation, and we work with philanthropists, and we help them find ways to invest their money in the Adirondack region to make the greatest impact. And I think the ALICE study has been extremely important for us to be able to help donors understand where they can invest that money. And I wanted to say thank you to John, who came up and talked about the backpack programs, because Adirondack Foundation has been funding Ticonderoga and other backpack programs. But we also want to talk about how we help these families. I think one of the most important things about the idea of the ALICE study is thinking through, you know, those folks really need help, and a lot of them have children, and that's something that you talked about. And Adirondack Foundation's got one of our priority projects is the Adirondack Birth to 3 Alliance. And that's looking at how can we help families with the youngest children, because we know that that's where we can have the greatest impact. And when those families are under stress, that has a great impact on the development of those children. And so we've been able to use the ALICE data to focus down on that program and talk to people, the child care providers and others, and help them reduce stress for families. So thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you, Megan, for your work.
Thank you, Megan. Megan works for the Adirondack Foundation, and I'm the executive director of ADK Action, in addition to being on the ALICE committee. And we recently used their crowdsourcing platform to raise funds for a food justice project in Keysville, New York. It's called The Pharmacy, and maybe some of you have heard of it, but the idea is that in a lot of our communities, especially in the Champlain Valley, you'll see these empty grocery stores. And Keysville has one, for example, right downtown, 8,000 square feet, empty building. There's another one in Willsboro, the old IGA. And so we have a community revitalization project that looks at opportunities to enliven downtowns. And when you have a downtown that is largely taken up by an empty building, you have to get creative and think out of the box, which John's a big fan of. And so we came up with the project idea to create a farm store within the pharmacy. So it's farm store with an F, pharmacy with an F. And we're working with 5 local farms and then 2 other local businesses to stock the store with very fresh, local, high-quality products. And then we're also applying to accept SNAP and WIC benefits, as well as the Farm Fresh Cash through New York State. And we're working on some outreach with the schools right now as well.
I'm Sandra Weber from Elizabethtown. Earlier in my life, I was an ALICE. I was a single mother raising 2 daughters for about 10 years. And I just kind of want to build on a comment that was made a little while ago, is that part of what's going on there is not only a financial crisis within the family, but an emotional crisis and a stress that's going on. And so everything we can do to help to alleviate that stress within the family, like the backpack program, and if we can help with transportation or whatever, because it's really that, I think that stress that creates even more of an obstacle to success for that family, as much as the finance. So, thank you.
That is a fantastic point. Thank you for bringing that up. It's so important to understand that those of us that aren't necessarily facing that type of crisis would scratch our head and say, why did they decide to do that? What would make them do something like that? And you have to stop and think about that. And you have to realize that when you're under the kind of pressure you just described, your critical thinking is different than when you're not under that kind of pressure. And we often forget that. And so the circumstances are very different for people that are facing these kinds of issues.
John, if people would like to learn more about the United Way and what you and your many partner agencies do, where can they go, and where also can they find this 300-page ALICE report if they'd like to sit down and read this? It is fascinating to read this and look at all the statistics.
It is indeed. You certainly could contact our office and we'll be happy to provide that report to you. We're in the process of providing that through our website, which is unitedwayadk.org. It may be posted as we speak there, but it will be in the next couple of days. It's 317 pages or 311 pages, and it's quite extensive. And we want to share it with people, so happy to provide people a hard copy if that's what they'd like. We can email it to you, and again, you can go to our website for the ALICE report.
And you have more than 40 partner agencies, and over the past several years, you've helped on the average of 80,000 people in Clinton and Franklin counties.
42 partner agencies across the region collectively provided service to 80,000 people. That's half the population. So it's every other person in this room. It's every other person on the street, and your issues could range from end-of-life issues like hospice to early childhood development issues like Megan spoke about, and everything in between. Most of what we're seeing the need for is the issues we've discussed today and the struggles that ALICE households are facing.
And if folks want to help, obviously many take money out from their paycheck every week and contribute to the United Way. For those that would like to help out, where can they go to do so?
Well, hopefully in their workplace, they would be able to participate in a workplace campaign, and through the United Way campaign, you can actually designate to any number of partner agencies or services that you prefer, and they will get every penny of that designation. And that's important for people to know, because payroll deduction and workplace giving is a painless way to provide funds for the community.
And if they've missed that opportunity, they can go to your website and find a way to contribute.
Absolutely.
John, Sylvie, Brittany, and Mark, thank you very much. And I would like to thank our panelists, our audience, and you at home. By raising awareness and taking action, we can give not only a name and face, but voice to the thousands of individuals and families in every community who are ALICE, which in turn builds a stronger, more vibrant community across the North Country. For all of us at Mountain Lake PBS, I'm Tom Halleck. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
Mountain Lake Journal on Mountain Lake PBS is made possible in part by
Northern Insuring, guiding your way for 85 years with offices in Plattsburgh, Whitehall, and Messina, providing personal insurance, business insurance, and life and employee benefit services.
Northline Utilities creates employment and training opportunities for North Country residents with projects that build community and social infrastructure. We're family-focused and education-oriented. Power is our business and pride is our choice.
Knight Automotive, featuring a full selection of the entire Buick lineup in stock, and our world-class rated General Motors technician Terry Relation with 40 years of experience. Knight Automotive, Route 3, Plattsburgh.